How did one advisor turn a tax bomb that had been cooking for 18 years into new value for his client's portfolio? Hey everyone, it's William Wade here with our first edition of Advisor Corner presented by FIA. In this series, we're going to be going through case studies from advisors that we work with that we think will benefit you as well. Let's go ahead and jump in. To give you some background on this particular case, an advisor that we work with came to us. He has a client who had purchased a variable annuity from his previous advisor 18 years ago, and this advisor wanted us to evaluate that and make some recommendations. The first thing that we did was take a look at the existing variable annuity. This one was purchased 18 years back with non-qualified money. About $180,000 went in, and today it was worth $350,000. Where's the tax bomb come in? Of course, all those gains had been tax deferred for nearly 2 decades, so there was $170,000 of gains built up that could create quite the tax bomb if the client just wanted to surrender this policy. Taking a look at it from the growth standpoint, over the last 18 years, this variable annuity had averaged a meager 4%, when the S&P at that same period of time had averaged 8%. So the client was getting half the return with all the risk. The two main drags on their growth were, first, they were paying nearly 3% in fees a year, and second, the sub-accounts in the variable annuity had a lot of volatility mechanisms where a good portion of the money was getting put into fixed income, so there wasn't very good equity exposure. From the growth standpoint and the tax standpoint, we had a problem, but what we have to do is make lemons out of lemonade. So we made 2 recommendations to the advisor of potential alternatives. First, we took a look at moving this money to a new annuity. This product in particular was with Mass. It was a fee-based annuity, and it offered a 10% annual S&P cap that is guaranteed to stay at 10% for the full 7-year duration of the product. In this case, we know if the advisor is charging 1%, that cap nets out to about 9%. We know if the S&P does what it normally does, the client's going to earn an average of 5 to 6% over the next 7 years. That's a lot better than the meager 4% that they'd been earning in a variable annuity, and they didn't have any risk in this policy. There was a 0% floor on this one, so if the S&P was down 40%, client was just getting no return for that year and losing the, say, 1% advisory fee that was coming out. The second thing that this did is allow the advisor to do proactive tax planning. Obviously, the client didn't want to surrender that variable annuity and have a $160,000 tax liability, so the advisor instead, by moving it over to Mass, was able to proactively manage the taxes by taking up to 10% out of the annuity every year without kicking the client into the next tax bracket. So each fall they were planning to meet and figure out, okay, how much money are we going to take out of this annuity? Taking those taxes out over time without having to have that $170,000 tax liability. Now, the second recommendation that we made to the advisor was taking a look at a long-term care policy that's on an annuity chassis. If the client wanted to protect the rest of his portfolio from the potential long-term care spend down in his later years, this was a very viable solution as well. We could move this money over to the long-term care policy tax-free, and then if the client did go into a scenario where he needed long-term care, he would receive almost $15,000 each and every month for 6 years. That's $1 million over that 6-year period of time on an asset that was $350,000. The best part, each and every dollar that comes out for long-term care is coming out tax-free. So again, we're not having to deal with that tax bomb of that $170,000 of gains that had built up. Because it is a long-term care policy on an annuity chassis, every dollar that comes out for long-term care is tax-free. And the second piece of this policy that the advisor also liked is it gave them the flexibility, again, to take up to 10% out of the policy each year. $15,000 a month is kind of a Cadillac policy for long-term care, so he was planning on over time taking a little bit out each year to replenish his client's cash account and get that policy down to a point where it was maybe a little bit more reasonable monthly benefit versus using that whole thing for long-term care. That's a quick summary on how one of the advisors we work with was able to take a tax bomb that had been ticking for 18 years and bring that into new value for his client's portfolio. Thanks for joining.